Welcome to Timberline Bass Podcast, your place for Wisconsin bass fishing and everything outdoors.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Timberline Bass Podcast. Tonight I'm gonna redo that shaky head episode I did. I'm gonna leave it up just because whatever. The shit show is real, but kind of go through, I've had more time to think on it a little bit, and it's actually saved my ass a couple times in the last few derbies I fished. And I really want to give it the attention it's due. Like I said, when I recorded the first episode, um, there's a lot of guys out there that still throw it. But so many people I don't think really realize how versatile, it can be. Um, so there's going to be a lot of repeat information in here. Just kind of going to go through and do it the justice it deserves. Um, so starting out, basically, a shaky head is um, more or less a stand-up jig, traditionally fished with a worm on it. I am actually gonna pause for a second because I just had some new ones come in, and I'll kind of do a little bit of a show and tell here. And just like that, a little bit of movie magic. It's like nothing happened. So yeah, I I throw it so much. I literally every time I put it in an order on Omnia, I order like three more packages of hooks, and I replenish my worms. This is not the one I would normally use. This is what brand is it? Tree Shaker. Never heard of them, but normally I run um the spot removers. Who makes that? Not Dirty Jigs. The Dirty Jig ones are very good too. Them are the horseshoe shaky head. Um, if you look them up online, spot remover shaky head jigs. Them are by far my favorite. There's multiple different styles, but if you look closely here, this has got that little screw lock there. What I don't like about these is how the line tie is. It's just kind of a goofy angle. I don't know. I'm gonna try them and see how they work. Like I said, I couldn't get my normal ones. Um, but essentially, this is what makes a shaky head a shaky head. Now, there's other types out there. There's some where you text pose them, where this part would be gone, and you would run it up and just text pose it that way. Nothing wrong with them. And then you've got football style head. I want to say for a while there was even, really, you could almost fish like a biffle head the same way, throwing a Laztec plastic on it. You could use it pretty similarly. I don't think it would hurt anything. I know I've caught fish doing it in a pinch. Um, but yeah, just the big thing I look for, I like one with a flat bottom like that. This still isn't quite perfect, but it'll do. For practice and stuff, I'll save my good spot removers for derby days. But um, in the 90% of the time, I am throwing robo worms on them. I like the straight tail, the fat straight tail. I do use quite a few Zoom trick worms too. I really like robo worms colors. These are one of my favorite for around here. I don't know how well you can see it. This is their new IU. Um, I don't know why bass in Wisconsin like the IU. It's green, pumpkin, white, little bit of gold. But there's not a bass in Wisconsin that's ever seen an IU. They are pretty much exclusive to Japan. But a phenomenal color. Um, I guess since I got all this crap here, I'll kind of go through rigging one. They're super simple with that screw lock. I always kind of take it and you sort of just force the worm onto the screw lock there and work it down. Um, Thread it. I like to thread it all the way down to the jig head itself. I guess you wouldn't necessarily need to. I don't think it would really matter a whole hell of a lot either way. Um, I'm not going to go all the way down because this is taking forever and I'm going to ruin this worm for no apparent reason. So you get it there like that, it's hanging. And then the cheat I always do when you're trying to figure out, because it's so easy when you're text posing a hook. I take my hook, see where it's gonna go, mark it with my finger, run the hook through right there, and it comes out like perfect every time. That is the one thing I don't like with this jig head though, is if you look at it, the screw lock is at a funny angle. So now I will obnoxiously go through and rebend all these before I put them in my tackle tray and get the angle right, because that will bother the hell out of me. Whether the fish care or not, I have no idea, but I have a very slight case of OCD, I guess. Um, so yeah, that was out of my box of goodies from Omnia. Here, I'll kind of go through and show some other stuff too, and kind of giving up a little bit of juice here, I guess. I robo worms are like a pretty pretty important part of my repertoire. I mean, I use them for a lot of stuff. I will throw them on a core tackle hover rig when I'm fishing grass. I just they got such a good fluttery action that way. I pretty much that's all I drop shot is robo worms. I can't even say there's a specific one. I just look for whatever color I want, whatever body shape it is, and I've never not caught fish on them. But some of my favorite colors, hands down, this is a big one. Um, Pumpkin Punisher. It's like a green pumpkin chartreuse. They another one I throw a lot of. It's really similar is Bold Bluegill. Very similar to this, but it's more of a lime green than a chartreuse, I'd say, with a black line. Like I said, the new IU. Um, and then hands down, one of my all-time favorites is Aaron's Magic. I mean, you gotta Amar is synonymous with Robo Worm, like um, but yeah, I mean that's 90% of the time what I'm throwing on a shaky head. But it doesn't really have to be locked into that. Well, I'll get to it. We'll kind of go through my list here. We'll kind of breeze by some of this a little bit. So yeah, I mean, by definition, a shaky head is a simple jig head with a worm or soft plastic threaded on it, designed to stand up on the bottom, creates a subtle action with very little rod movement. I find a lot of times I catch most of my fish when I'm just soaking it, letting it lay there. When it's windy, I'll drag it like a Carolina rig, throw it out there, let it sit, and just kind of work it along. You can't set the hook the same way as you would with a Carolina rig. So I mean, keep that in mind. But it really doesn't seem to be a wrong way to throw it. I mean, that's honestly one of the things I'll tie on if I've got somebody in the boat who doesn't really fish very often. You can throw it on a spinning rod. That's what I do most of the time. Rock a little bit heavier action. You don't want your wimpy little drop shot rod doing it. Um, but it's one of those things like you can adjust the weight so much to get the feeling for somebody who doesn't know what they're feeling for. It's another good one for checking bottom composition. I mean, most of us can see that now with side imaging and stuff like that. But to make sure I'm not drifting off a rock pile, I guess I'm still a little too old school to rely completely on the electronics. I still do a lot of things by feeling, I guess. Um, but it's one of those baits too. I catch fish super heavy with it. Sometimes they want it on the fall. To me, that's why it goes hand in hand so much with a Ned rig. To me, it's like a big Ned rig, basically. Um, the fall, you catch a lot of fish if you're throwing a really light jig head on the fall with it. Um, Inexperienced people, a lot of times I'll tell them just throw it out and reel it really slow so you can feel it bouncing on the bottom, and people catch fish that way. Um, Kind of look through my notes here a second. And it is too, like it's one of those things. you can power fish it. I mean, I'll throw brush piles and stuff with it, but it is one of those when it's a finicky or rough bite, just something to lean on in your back pocket. Um, I'd say it's the biggest difference between a shaky head and just Texas rigging a worm. That stand up head, you're keeping that angle. As long as you got tension on it and the buoyancy of the plastic, it kind of keeps it like that. And even if you're dragging it or just subtly popping it, it looks like a bait fish or something picking at the bottom. Um, and even when you're just letting it sit there too, it is so subtle that with the robo worms and stuff, the way the tails move, it, it- to me, it's similar to the mindset of a Cinco. Like less is more. Um, I notice when I'm in a hurry or getting spun out, and I really start working the thing, like you don't catch as many fish. It's one of those things where you gotta sit back and tell yourself, let the bait do its thing. Um, Also, like a ribbon tail worm, believe it or not, works pretty good on there. I'll do that quite a bit. That's kind of one of my tricks out on Miller, fishing some of the rock piles and stuff out there. Um, but I think the reason it excels so much is just honestly the subtlety to it. When you're fishing it right, it's just there. I don't know if the fish feel like they're taking it unaware. We try so hard to personify and psychoanalyze these bass, and we overcomplicate the shit out of it. I mean, I'm sure it's just looks like an easy meal. Let's eat it. Um, kind of breaking it down a little bit by season, when to throw a shaky head. Pre-spawn staging fish. The nice thing is the way it works. I mean, it works good on rock, fish and laydowns. It's one of those baits I really don't worry about hanging up. I mean, I will when I've got one tied on a bait caster and I'm throwing a heavier head. I've got no problem dropping it right in the middle of a brush pile or a tree sticking off the bank or whatever. Um, I think in the summer it really excels on offshore structure. It works pretty good on docks and stuff. It's kind of challenging to skip, but it can be done. Um, I I find myself a lot of times running shade lines and just tossing it up against the bank where you're dragging it into the water and just work it out. You pick up a lot of fish that way. Deep points. I do genuinely see it as more of a deeper structure bait, but it does just fine on the bank. I mean, especially if I'm fishing behind somebody as a co-angler or whatever. Um, a drop shot and a shaky head should be like an automatic in your setup you take with you. If nothing else is just something to fall back on. Um, and honestly, you can throw it on a flipping stick if you need to. I mean, that's not, I guess, my first choice, but it is one of those things. They got a stout enough hook on them. You might want to watch how hard you're cracking them, but um, it really excels in the fall and like cold front conditions where the bite's kind of shutting down a little bit. When you're chasing bait fish into creeks. I think more often than not, in my opinion, a worm definitely mimics bait fish more than anything. Just kind of the action. That's even on a drop shot and stuff. I just have a hard time. I'll throw a fluke once in a while, but it just seems like I do better on a worm. Um, and then it because of the weedless nature, it works really good fishing around grass and stuff. I mean, that's one of those baits. I'll lob it right into the grass, and when you can feel it's getting a little bit hung up or whatever, just snap the rod tip and it cleans itself off pretty good. Um, in winter down south, I mean it doesn't really apply to us up here, but I mean down south, it really is one of the best finesse presentations. Um, you know, I guess really what I'm getting at is a shaky head is a 365-day a year bait. It just works. Um, you know, again, this is all kind of I covered it in the other one, but we'll kind of touch on it again. It really excels around riprap, chunk rock, gravel, transition areas. That is actually a killer. Like, you always find them banks where it's sand leading into gravel or gravel into chunk rock. A lot of times I will spend a lot of time, like that's my go-to for doing stuff like that, is chucking that shaky head out there and working it down the edge of the transition. um it does work. Like I said, you can skip it under docks. There's better baits I mean, I would even argue maybe a Texas rig is probably easier to skip. But fishing around the edges and if you can get under their posts and walkways, and it is a great follow-up bait after missing one on a jig. It's just a totally different, subtle thing, especially, throw it on a lighter head makes it harder to skip, but, slow that fall rate way down. Um, it really is an offshore structure, but, it excels on points, humps, brush piles, shell beds. I'll throw it around cribs because you don't really got to worry about hanging it up quite as much. The other thing I look at too, I mean, shaky heads have been out so long, there's not as much into them as building a regular jig. They're relatively reasonably priced. I mean, you can get a pack of 3 to 5 of them for $7, depending on the brand and what hooks they got in them. Um, like I said, I'm just not big on the Texas rig ones. I know there's some guys that's all they'll throw, not having the little screw lock. I've even heard people say that the screw lock can kind of mess with the hookup ratio, and I've never had an issue with it. Um, One thing I do notice, you get a lot of little fish picking it up. Even when we were out on Tomahawk or whatever for that veterans tournament, the amount of rock bass I caught on that thing was just insane. They were thumping it like little smallmouth, and as soon as you set the hook, like you knew you didn't have a smallie, but they were just choking on that damn thing all the way down to the stomach. Like it's a nifty little thing, and to me, that's what I look at. Like when I'm looking for a finesse, when times are tough thing. Those are the days where, unfortunately, like, yeah, you're probably gonna have to weed through some little stuff and not necessarily what you're looking for. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that's I guess a confidence booster on a shitty day. Just getting a bite at all. I mean, yeah, like it's disappointing when it ain't a bass, but at least it keeps you alert and keeps you paying attention. The thump is the drug. Like, eh, so when I'm looking for something on a rough day, like I want little fish to be able to grab it. Maybe that's the wrong mindset. I don't know. That's just the way I look at stuff. Another thing too, it does work really good, like I said, around grass and stuff. Outside, inside weed edges, works really good. Sparse vegetation, it really excels. Going around, like when you're punching, if you want to throw something in a hole or whatever, that's a good bait for that. And like I said, I have no problem lobbing it right in grass. I'll throw it in coontail, whatever. I mean, it comes through pretty good. Like I said, you just got to snap the rod tip once in a while. And bank fishing, it's great on steep banks, transition banks, and secondary points. Like there really is no wrong answer with a shaky head. Um, we'll kind of go through some baits here too. The plastics on there. Clearly the worms. Your trick style worms, finesse worms, the robo worms. Uh, Cinco's definitely not a bad choice. I mean, that's definitely got like a weird subtle action. There really is, as long as it's freaking big enough to get on there, like it'll work. Um, but I definitely think of the worms as more of a clear water, like pressured cold front type of thing. Um, and another. Another one guys probably don't think much of, creature baits. Like I'll throw a bigger brush hog on there sometimes, especially if I'm fishing cribs or if I'm dragging it like a Carolina rig or something like that. It's got a little bit bigger hook on it. That works pretty good. Like your longer craws, like the Zoom spine craws, I'll throw them on there quite a bit if you want something not a worm, but still a relatively subtle action. Where I feel like a brush hog, there's so many extra appendages flapping around. It's a little bit flashier. Where that spine craw is still, not as big of a profile. Um, one issue you do get with a shaky head, the bigger the worm, a lot of times and it's more the smaller fish will pick it up by the actual tail. Um, where it seems like most of your bigger fish try to suck it in head first. They don't. Yeah, who knows what they think it is, but if it's like what do they call them, a raid fish, something with spines, um, the bass have adapted to try to eat them head first. You'll notice a lot of times on like a jerk bait or a crankbait or something, you get a lot of them that come around and smack it from the front, or they'll hit it and come back and hit it at what they think is head first, because then they can swallow it whole. Like they don't have teeth, they can't chew. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but if they swallow it backwards and them spines dig in, well, next thing you know, they're choking to death on a crappie or a bluegill or something like that. Which is also why, like, when that's the profile I'm going for, I do definitely tend to lean towards smaller. Um, it's easier to swallow a crappie that big backwards than a crappie that big backwards. Um, just something to think of when you're doing stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, definitely around rock, I think the spine craw thing would come in a little bit more. Fishing around trees and wood and stuff like that too. Same thing with the brush hog. I definitely think of that more around brush and stuff like that. Another good one is like a floating worm. Just to help keep it held up. Like I do throw a lot of the Z-Man finesse worms or whatever. They're equivalent to a trick worm, but they're a Laztec. Um, I really like their pumpkin color. Like I probably got 50 bags of them floating around the boat. Um, they just work phenomenal for that. Another good one are like the 5 to 7 inch um 6 cents panorama minnows. They they're just so realistic looking, and the body shape just freaking plays to a shaky head. It's kind of that sideways wounded fish thing. Especially like their what do they call it? Real bluegill, real. I think they got a real perch and a real crappie. They got some really good freaking minnow colors. Um, to me, them are hand in hand for a shaky head. Like I see that more than for a drop shot or anything else. And again, if you're trying to skip a shaky head, that style of body shape definitely makes up for the jig head a little bit, makes them a little easier to skip. Um, yeah, I mean, if you can find a way to wedge it on the frickin' hook, it'll work. Like I would even argue you could probably throw a koiki on there, and I don't think you'd still get bites. I mean, in all honesty, I think you could even take a koiki and screw it onto the screw lock or just run it down the shank of the hook and leave it there, and it's a good head design. Um, so now colors, like with the robo worms and stuff, you don't. I want to say it's more realistic colors, but not really. I mean, like you got your. I think they got a version of Tequila Sunrise. You got your Morning Dawn, stuff like that. Um, them are all really good colors, but especially like Clearwater, highly pressured fish. I really like the bait fish colors, like that new IU. The green pumpkin back, the white belly. I mean, to me, it looks like a baby bass, especially with the gold stripe going down it. And I think that's part of a marketing ploy with that color, purely for the fact that for whatever reason, us as bass anglers seem to have some sort of issue with the fact that bass are cannibals. And unfortunately, it's a fact of life. Like they eat their own. It is what it is. When they're swimming around, a minnow's a minnow and a bass fry's a minnow. So if it swims and it fits in its mouth, it's freaking food. Where I use are a very similar color, but I think that's the reason it plays the way it does. Um, I'll throw. I got some like June bug colored worms and stuff. That's I know a lot of guys swear by that. That's just I don't know, not one of my confidence colors. Motor oil is like tried and true. Again, not one of my confidence colors, but it works in a pinch. Um, I guess I'll give away a little juice here. Miller, like an old school color out there, was always red shad. No idea why it works out there, but it's a thing. I'll throw that on a shaky head quite a bit. Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, like if you're sticking with the robo worms, they really don't have much for black and blue and stuff like that. Um, but you can get your trick worms in that color. You can get the Z-Man finesse worms in that color. But black and blue, black and red, that's more your dirty water colors. Even straight black. Scuppernong's another color I really like. That plays pretty good out on Miller. I guess it's kind of red shaddy. Again, it all comes down to watercolor. Um, kind of getting into the gear setup a little bit here. You want like a 610 to a 7.3 medium to medium heavy. Throwing a shaky head, I mean, if you're gonna get just a dedicated shaky head rod, I would definitely lean more towards the medium heavy. If you're looking for something, you don't want a million rods. Um, the medium, I mean, it's fine. You just got to crack them a little harder. Um, you want a 2,500 to 3,000 size spinning reel. You get better casting distance. Um, I think on my rod, I'm running my dedicated shaky head rod is a St. Croix Bass X. I think it's a 610 medium heavy, and I've got a 7 reel on there, and I absolutely love it. I shouldn't say it's dedicated. That's my tube rod too. Smalley fishing in the fall and stuff. Just an all around good rod. Super sensitive. I think I got J braid on that. I'm a pretty big fan of the Daiwa braids, the J braid, the X braid. Just phenomenal stuff. I don't have near the issues with it. I do a lot of stuff. Um, Spinex isn't terrible. But I run 15-pound braid, and then when I'm throwing a shaky head or a tube, I always go with a 12-pound leader. Fluorocarbon, that I do all pretty much just throwing Sunline Sniper this year. Sniper or shooter, I don't know. I got some of each. Um, but then you got enough snot there to crack them good. But at the same time, like I remember as a kid just throwing straight copolymer. I mean, I like the castability of braid, but I guess there's no real reason why you couldn't just throw straight fluoro or copolymer either. Biggest reason I go with the braid is the sensitivity. I mean, that with that rod and that setup with a shaky head, I mean, if a freaking bass farts on it, you know it. Like it's a pretty good setup. St. Croix really impresses me with their rods, and good line makes a big difference. Now if you're gonna go out and buy a bunch of heads, I mean, I do. I carry everything from an eighth inch up to or eighth ounce to 3/8. Don't throw the 3/8 very often unless it's like super windy. I definitely try to stay in that like quarter to 3/16. But again, it's all on the day what they're looking for. A fast, slow drop if that matters at all. When you pop it, how quick it gets back to the bottom. Just all stuff to think about, and you can negate all that a little bit too. Floating plastics, play around with it. I mean, uh, um, retrieve methods, like I said, I like to dead stick it, just soak it, let it sit, you know, smoke a cigarette, take a drag, pick it up, feel if there's something there, pop it once, let it sit for a while again. But then there's days where you just throw it out and let it sit there, and you just know eventually something's going to hit it, and give it 3 to 5 minutes, reel it in, and cast again. The classic shake and pause, pick it up, shake it a few times, and wait. I mean, really slack up, keep it on a semi slack line and feel for it, and then pick it up and shake it again, and dragging it like I said, like a Carolina rig, or just picking the rod tip up and dragging it through the rocks. When I'm trying to feel the bottom, that's what I'm normally doing. Hopping it, popping it like you would a tube and letting it sink back down works really good. You can definitely skip it. Like I said, not my first choice, but you can do it. But I think the biggest thing guys really miss with a shaky head is fishing too fast. Overworking it and working it too quick will screw you almost every time. Um, other common mistakes, too heavy of a head. Yeah, I look at it like you want to be as light as you can possibly get away with. Depending on winds, stuff like that, sometimes you can't. Or if you're trying to get it down there quick. Um, Another one guys really misses the light bites. And it's hard. I know I do it a lot too. I probably miss tons of fish, but the thing is, normally when you're throwing it, it is a more of a finessey situation. They're a little bit more lockjawed. They're not always going to smoke it. Sometimes you'll pick up and there'll just be a little bit of weight there, which can be a real pain in the ass when you're fishing grass because, am I tangled up in weeds again, or does a fish have it? Um, my favorite saying is hook sets are free, shaky heads are cheap enough, worms are cheap enough. Fucking crack them. I mean, so you lost a buck and a jig head and a worm. I mean, it is what it is. I buy them in bulk. Like I said, every time I put it in order, I order more shaky heads. So I don't even. I think half my wall in my garage is probably robo worms at this point because I use them so often. Um, you know, Building confidence in it, I think, is a key thing, though. Like I got lucky; that was one of them. When we were dragging rock piles or fishing deep brush piles and stuff like that. When Dad would get sick of retying his expensive jigs, he'd tie a shaky head on a spinning rod and say, "Have at it." And I threw it a lot. Um, Actually, some of my best memories of fishing when I was a kid. We're catching stuff on a shaky head, fishing grass, and even fishing the bank. Like we'd be doing so good on it, and you just keep hucking the damn thing around. And um, but the easiest way to get confidence in it, I mean, just take a day where there's no ulterior motive, and just commit to it. Throw it shallow, throw it deep, just keep it in your freaking hand. I guarantee you're gonna catch fish on it. Um, Another thing too to help build on it, if you miss a fish, toss that in there after it. Let's say you're fishing a swim jig and they're short striking it, or you just missed one. Freaking drop that rod, pick up the shaky head, and toss that right where you missed the bite. You would not believe how often a fish will turn around and do it. That's one of our tricks. Frog fishing, not with a shaky head, but if you get a blow up on a frog and they won't come back and hit it, throw a swim jig in there real quick and drop it in the same place. Like way more often than you would think, they'll whip around and hit that swim jig. Um, and to me, it's a limit bait. Once I got my 5 fish and I'm looking. Granted, now there are days like when we were on Phillips chain, that was such a hard bite. That's what I threw all day. I had a pumpkin punisher robo worm on, fishing the inside weed edge right against the freaking bank, and that was all I could do. I couldn't figure nothing else out. And it saved my ass. I ended up coming in second on that one and cashing a check at least, so it wasn't a wasted day. But that's why I have the confidence in it. Like when all else fails, I grab a shaky head. Um, but like I said, once I got my limit, that's when I'll go around and I'll start, maybe throw a glide bait for a while, or do the bigger fish things when I'm trying to build up. Um, and I keep it tight on year round. I mean, there is always a shaky head on the deck of my boat. Um, there's always a jig, there's always a swim jig, and there's always a shaky head. I don't give a shit what I'm doing that day. Those three rods will be on the deck of my boat because those are what I have confidence in. When all else fails, I know I'm going to catch fish on one of those three things. Um, maybe I guess a personal challenge. Next time you go fishing, fish it for the first 2 hours of the trip. Give it a chance. See if you get anything on it. I mean, I guess don't just take me for my word on it. Like, I know there's plenty of stuff out there guys swear by, like a Carolina rig. I throw on. I used to throw it a lot when I was younger. I should have way more confidence in it than I do, but it's been so many years since I've done it. It's one of those like, well, I could tie in a football head or throw a drop shot but there's times when that's what they want. I guess a few other things. Since we were talking about frogs and stuff, I'll spill a little juice here. Um, so we do a lot of frog fishing. I guess being this close to the Mississippi River and stuff, that's kind of a given. Um, but I don't like. I'm really picky on frogs. I uh, I like a soft frog. It seems like when you get too hard of a one, like as an example, nothing against Spro, like I love bronze eye frogs, but it seems like you can buy 10 of them and 5 of them the plastic will be so damn hard on them. And there's ways to fix it. I mean, you can boil them to soften them up, you can leave them sitting on the dash of your truck for a while. All those things make a difference. um but there are just some that come out of the package like so much softer. um and I guess looking at it too, there's three main frogs. You got your buzzing frog where they got the paddle tails and they kind of buzz when you're working them. To me, that's more of a fishing shade lines or weed edges, not really a lily pad frog or a duckweed frog. Then you've got your standard frog. I suppose most people probably come to mind the old oh, a scum frog. Like that was the thing when I was a kid. We all had scum frogs tied on. And they're still around, but there's so many better frogs out there. Granted, they're soft, but I don't know, there's better frogs. Um, but then my personal favorite are a poppin' frog. And me and dad go round and round on these. Like he won't throw them in duckweed. Um, But the way I look at it, so like you can fish a popping frog like a regular frog, that nice subtle. You don't got to sploosh the water with it. Um, but you can't fish a regular frog like a popping frog. Like you just, no matter what you do, you can't make it do the sploosh thing. And that's sometimes they want a subtle where you're just slowly walking it, letting it sit. And then sometimes with the popping frogs, like I rip on that bastard like it owes me money. I mean, like the splashing and I'll yank it so hard that cup mouth will grab and just launch a freaking little wave out there. And you would not believe how often, I'll twitch it a few times, snap it like that, get it to sploosh, and just kind of let it sit there for a minute. And then, wait till the ripples are gone and just give it one quick snap, and one will just freaking blow up on it. Um, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that throw these, but these are the Gavicos. Jackal makes them by far. Like they're not the cheapest frog out there. They've come down a little bit, but just a high quality frog. Little on the hard side. I do like the Jackal Kiras. I buy two. They're a little bit smaller, a little. I don't want to say a finesse frog, but they're almost like a finesse frog. They're harder to throw. Um, but super soft. I mean, they look at them wrong and they're hooked. Where these, they really got to be eating it for them to get it. But like I said, I know this was supposed to be a shaky head show, but I'll kind of get into some stuff here on the frogs, just to make a little more time, make it a little bit different from the other episode. So when you look on a frog, the way these hooks are, you can see on here they're protected by this plastic. They kind of tuck in there, and that's so they're not hanging up on stuff. Great idea. I mean, it's frogs are meant to be weedless, coming through lily pads and stuff like that. But my thing is I throw a frog on 65-pound braid. I've literally ripped freaking trees out of the bank before. I mean, little ones, you know. Um, I don't care. Like, let it hang up. Coming through lily pads and stuff, I'll give it a good yank and get it to break loose from the pads. Um, I just don't worry about it. So what I do, this is a brand new one. I haven't done it yet, but I'll take the hook and I will grab it right here with the pliers and I will tweak them up a little bit so that the hook points are sticking up over top of that. And that way, when you set the hook or when they grab it, like that tighter angle makes it so much easier to bury the hooks in the roof of their mouth. And with one of these frogs, like if I set the hook and the rod stops, you know, the normal frog thing, get them up and get them on top of the pads or the grass or the duckweed or whatever and winch them in as quick as you can, almost like they're skiing across. But when I have the hook angle that way, I know when I set the hook, I can horse on them as much as I want. I've boat flipped freaking 4-pounders out of the lily pads before with 5 pounds of grass on them. They ain't coming off because I buried both the hooks in the rough of their mouth. Another one, I kind of hate to admit it, like we don't really talk about it very much. Frogs suck to throw. You know, I'm running like I don't know, maybe a 7-6 foot rod, 7 foot 6 inches, 65-pound braid. Um, I can launch a frog a freaking mile, but none of my frogs are left factory. Every time I buy them before they go in my frog box, regardless of the brand, I peel the hooks up like I said, and then so I go on Amazon or something like that. Like, don't buy Carolina rig beads. Dad's gonna be pissed at me for this one, but glass beads. Um, and then you open the hole where the hook goes in, and I do the bigger. I mean, I just buy like the crafting beads off Amazon, but you know, essentially what would be a Carolina rig bead. Um, and I stuff them in that hole there, and that's it gives it just enough more weight. Like you don't want to do it so the frog's sinking, but it gives you just enough more weight to get it out there a little farther. You know, just little tricks to consider, little things to help you out because frogs are so light. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I got for this episode. For the last cast presented by TNT Tackle tonight. What do I got? We'll stick with the shaky head thing. Take a day and give it a shot. I mean, you're not going to regret it. I get it's one of them not sexy old school things, but it's one of those things that if you can take the time and build the confidence in it, you definitely won't regret it. Thank you for watching the Timberline Bass Podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, comment, all that normal stuff. Thank you very much for your support.